Made by D.W. Griffith in 1909, A Corner in Wheat was an amazingly advanced film for that early date and marked an important milestone in his career. It also launched the careers of more stars and directors, too, than any other single film up to then. Though made before general public consciousness of propaganda in entertainment, is a powerful sermon against greed, with a message approach that today we'd expect only in a Soviet anti-capitalist film. The players here are Linda Arvidsson, Mrs. Griffith, James Kirkwood as her farmer husband, Christy Miller, and little Gladys Egan. These, of course, are hard-working folk of the soil who eke out a simple existence by raising wheat. Suggesting the Midwest, quite creditably, these scenes were actually taken in Jamaica, New York. Griffith was influenced by the work of great artists, and this scene was inspired by Jean-Francois Millet's painting, The Sower. In later years, Griffith utilized several other great paintings in his historical epics, always with full credit to the artists. The camera work is by the great Billy Bitzer. The stockbroker is Frank Powell, later to become a director of note, and the man who made a star of Theda Bara. Heading his corps of assistants is Henry B. Walthall, then a mere extra, but soon to be established as one of the finest of actors. We are not told the mechanics of just how the market is to be cornered. All that matters is the result of the financial maneuvers and their effect on the underdogs always espoused by Griffith. Lots of up-and-coming biograph stars in this crowd scene. Bobby Harron, just to the right of center in the light suit, and Mac Sennett, Arthur Johnson there too. If you watch carefully. The story of A Corner in Wheat is based loosely on the novel The Pit, written by Frank Norris, whose work, often with serious sociological undertones, frequently attracted the more courageous film directors. It was Norris who authored McTeague, made into the classic Greed by Erich von Stroheim in 1923. As the stock manipulation reaches its climax, financiers suffer heavy losses. Thinking not at all of the suffering they have unleashed, the men of money congratulate themselves on their smart move. With an instinct for mass audience sympathy, Griffith continued to crusade for the underdog, usually by attacking intolerance, bigotry, and puritanical convention. But this early film was to remain his most outspoken onslaught against opportunism in the world of finance. The stockbroker's friends celebrate his latest triumph at a banquet. Among the guests here, Owen Moore, at the left, Arthur Johnson, famous comedian Billy Quirk, and Claire McDowell. Don't blame us. The rise in wheat is responsible, states a notice at the back of the store, to explain the doubling in price of loaf of bread. Although films had been made before on themes of social injustice, none had had quite this stark realism. Some of the later films, such as Cry of the Children, dealing with child labor, went a little overboard for sensationalism and lost the conviction and simplicity of a corner in wheat. Of course, the 1930s and early 40s produced some fine social films. Britain's Love on the Dole, Russia's Road to Life, America's I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, and The Grapes of Wrath. But Griffith had beaten them all to the punch by more than 2 decades. For some, hunger must be the heritage of the corner in wheat. Hunger that contrasts dramatically with the luxury surrounding the financier and his friends. Of course, the financier is not living in luxury just because the price of a loaf has been doubled, but by coupling the scenes, Griffith has subtly suggested it, and has demonstrated what a powerful medium of propaganda the film can be. It was his dovetailing of sequences in this same way that was to make The Birth of a Nation such political dynamite. Masterly editing to create emotional reaction among audiences who knew all the facts, but had never had them rammed home quite like this before. Among the chief sufferers, of course, the farmers, the men and women who raised the wheat and who now cannot afford to buy the bread made from it. The kindly storekeeper, unable to see his friends go hungry, gives away the bread to those who cannot afford it. But the supply is soon exhausted, and the plight of the luckless ones at the end of the line is serious. Unconcerned with the misery he has caused, the Wheat King plays host to his friends. Griffith took 10 days to make this one reeler. Usually he hurried through them much more quickly, but apparently this one excited him and he worked more carefully. Of course, today we've reached monumental extremes in filmmaking schedules. The 50s production of Moby Dick was to be in production for 2 years, while cheap westerns, 5 times the length of this corner in wheat, are made in exactly 3 days, or 1/3 of the time it took Griffith to shoot this 1,000 feet of film. As he received news of further stock gains, in his jubilation, the Wheat King forgot the open wheat pit. And while the stock manipulator slowly stifles to death in the very wheat he worshipped, the aftermath of his lust for wealth and power unfolds into a pattern of violence. Note the hand. This macabre touch foreshadows by more than 20 years the grim climax of Carl Theodor Dreyer's horror classic Vampire, in which the villain meets his end in exactly the same way. The woman, Grace Henderson, is puzzled by her husband's strange disappearance. But death itself cannot atone. And the suffering the Wheat King has caused lives on. Griffith had the courage and integrity not to weaken his preachment with a happy ending. The farmer sows again because it is the only life he knows. But he sows without hope or faith in the future, resigned to an unequal struggle with the men who control the product of the soil and of his own sweat. And so, returning once again to the painting of Millet, Griffith brings to a close this important and still hard-hitting drama, 1909's A Corner in Wheat.